friends, this is Sarah and I have come with my second book review on my booktube channel, and today it's going to be a classic science fiction called The Gods Themselves by Isaac Asimov. So I don't know a lot about Isaac Asimov himself. I've never read any of his other books, but I know that he's a pretty prolific science fiction writer. So this was my very first book by him, and I was inspired to just read some classic science fiction, and basically I will just go ahead and get started. So The Gods Themselves is all about this future planet Earth in the 22nd century, where basically something happens where this scientist named Frederick Hallam discovers that this piece of tungsten that he has sitting on his desk is suddenly exchanged somehow, and he doesn't know how it happened, but this tungsten is suddenly, it turns into plutonium. This exchange of these two materials is because there's this parallel universe that, with the exchange of these two metals, tungsten and plutonium, there are different laws in each of our universes, our universe and the parallel universe, and the switching of these metals results in the decaying of those metals to a more stable state, and the result is that the energy given off is free energy. It's clean energy. It seems limitless. Basically, this para-universe and our universe come up with this system to exchange these metals to exchange these metals basically for free energy. So it seems really great and wonderful, but there's a problem. Basically, it's determined by some that the exchange of these metals is great, free energy is great, but because of scientific processes, the way that it works is that eventually the sun is going to explode. That's not a spoiler, that is in the back of the book. That's basically the plot, and the whole point is to kind of see sort of basically what's going to happen. Okay, so we know this is going to happen. What is going to be done about it? Basically, this book is told in three parts, parts 1, 2, and 3. And part 1 is sort of the discovery of this process, what's called the electron pump. And Frederick Hallam discovered it, and this is one of the things in the book that it's sort of a point of contention. So Frederick Hallam discovers this swap, but the swap is not initiated on our side. It's initiated on the parallel universe's side. So, and I'm sort of quickly going into some of my thoughts on this book, that there's a lot of hurt egos and trying to say, "Ooh, no, he discovered it. No, I discovered it. No, it shouldn't be attributed to any of you. It should be attributed to them." And there's sort of a lot of male posturing a little bit throughout this whole book, and it got a little bit tedious. And like, okay, I get it. There's debate among scientists, some scientists, of who should be getting the credit, and it's all sort of bitter and a little bit petty, I will say. But basically, and I'm not kidding, that this first part, that's basically the first part. It explains how this electron pump works and how the energy exchange works and why the sun is in danger of exploding. And that's kind of the first part. The second part is by far, in my opinion, the most interesting, because it takes place in the parallel universe, and you get to see these aliens. It's focused on 3 aliens who make up what's called a triad. There's Dua, Trit, and Odin. And basically, in this universe, triads are composed of three of these creatures, and they each sort of represent kind of an aspect of a person, an emotional aspect, a rational aspect, and a paternal parenting aspect. And so it takes place entirely in the parallel universe, and it's mostly about alien sex, to be honest. The electron pump is mentioned, of course, but it really is focused on alien sex. It's very interesting because it's totally alien, so it was just really cool and fun to read. But you know, in terms of like the plot, it was kind of like sort of in the back of my mind. It wasn't really the focus of the second part, except sort of sprinkled throughout. And it sort of ended in a weird cliffhanger way that never gets brought up again after the second part is over. I feel like Asimov could have written it in a way that didn't sound so cliffhangery, and I would have been a little bit more satisfied with it, but the way that it was written makes it seem like, oh, wow, okay. And it just, you never go back to it. It just kind of ends. So basically it goes into the third part, which takes place shortly, you know, within like a few years, I think, of the first part, but it takes place on the moon. There's a lunar colony on the moon, and it focuses mainly on a scientist. What was his name? His name was Dennison, and this guy is related to the first part. He sort of is the one who egged on Frederick Hallam to do his research into what is this swapped metal, what is this? Basically, Hallam probably wouldn't have really given a hoot about it, except that Dennison poked fun at him, and out of spite, Hallam is like, okay, I don't really know what's going on here, but I'm gonna figure it out because you're a douchebag. So basically, Dennison is sort of discredited as a scientist and sort of left behind. So he goes to the moon, kind of hoping to escape all of that, and he has his own ideas about the sun exploding, because not everyone wants to accept that as a possibility, that the sun is going to explode, because the free energy gotten by that exchange of tungsten and plutonium is too great. It's too great. It's free energy. Why would we want to stop it? So he goes to the moon, and he meets this girl named Selene, spelled Celine. I've never heard that name pronounced Selene, but they spell it out phonetically in the chapter, so you know how to pronounce it. And they're working together to sort of, I guess, come up with a way to try and counter the possibility of the sun exploding. But it was a lot like the first part. There was just a lot of talking and explanations, and just the ending was a little anticlimactic. And even though the sun exploding is a very bad thing and a very big deal, I never felt like it was really important. There was just so much talking and pointing fingers and bitterness, and just, I don't know. I just wasn't particularly impressed with the first and second parts. The first and third parts. The second part, with the aliens, was very interesting and fun to read. I feel like it would have made a great short story. But basically, yeah, so the last part takes place on the moon, and they're kind of trying to figure out a way to solve the problem. There's sort of another underlying thing going on the moon of, they're called lunarites, people who are born on the moon, have never been to Earth. Sort of, there's some political tensions between lunarites and people of Earth. So there's another little subplot going on there. But yeah, I guess without spoiling anything, that's sort of the book. So my thoughts on the book, which I've already kind of sprinkled throughout. It was interesting. It was the science was real in the science fiction part of this. This very much was a situation of, okay, what if we introduce this idea of a parallel universe, and it has different laws of reality, which if you move things from one to the other, something, it's going to eventually settle onto the rules of the universe that it transferred to. Now what? What would happen if that were the case? And there was a lot of science explanation going on, and chemistry. So if you've never taken a chemistry class or weren't very good at chemistry, it'll be a little difficult to follow. I had to really take my time and read the explanation. It was clear that it was written in the most layman's terms possible, dumbed down enough so that the casual reader could understand it, but it was a little tricky to understand because it was very much rooted in science. So, I mean, he did it really well, but it was just, there was so much just like talking and angry men, angry that someone else is getting the credit and angry about being snubbed by other people, and it was just kind of like, all right, that's great. Can we stop the sun from exploding? Like, I don't know, it felt all a little pretentious, I guess. So yeah, the second part was great. I loved the second part with the aliens. I would have loved to read a book just about the aliens, but it was smashed in the middle. And another thing that was kind of fun that I'll point out is that the 3 parts are named from a quote. I didn't look up what the quote is from, but the quote is, and I'll hold up fingers for each part. So part 1 was, against stupidity, the gods themselves contend in vain. I struggle with the 3 on this hand. So I think the book is really aptly named because I think that the stupidity in this case is the pride of man. Just the idea that even when presented with evidence that goes contrary to what people think or want to believe, the desire to keep things the same or to not accept bad things happening is just strong enough to just blow out any evidence or science out the window and just be like, no, we are going to hold fast to this, what we believe, because accepting anything else is hard and scary and means, we have to sacrifice comfort or something to accept this reality. And I think that pride and ignorance and stupidity are very strong in the human race, and I think that was very apparent in this book. The whole point is that people, what was his name? He does have it, I keep saying people. One physicist in particular, Peter Lamont, is the guy in the first part who goes against Frederick Hallam and says, this is dangerous, we have to stop this pump because the sun could explode. It's probably going to explode. Oh gosh, I forgot exactly where I was going with that. But yeah, basically, people pointed this stuff out. Other people weren't willing to listen because this pump was going so well, things are going great. They don't want to shake up the status quo, and because people are stupid. So yeah, I would say that's my review of The Gods Themselves. It was pretty short, so I think it was a good length. It was 300, almost not even 300 pages, 293 pages. So it was short. It was good. I mean, I'm glad I read it. It just wasn't the best. It was just a little bit unurgent for how urgent the topic was. But yeah, I think I would probably rate it like a 3.5. It wasn't bad. It was just kind of boring and not as exciting. I think I prefer more action-packed, less hard science-based science fiction personally. But it was still an enjoyable book, and I'm glad that I read it. And that was my review. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know if you've read the book and what you think of it. I'm curious to know. So go ahead and leave a comment if you're interested, and I will see you next time in my next review.